Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Jeff Mccall, and his son was on NDE TV January 3rd. It's about 5 months ago. And now we have the pleasure of talking to his dad about his spiritual experiences. So, hi, Jeff.
Hello, it's good to be with you. I've been looking forward to this. I talked to Jeff about it uh, a few months ago, and that actually, when I woke up this morning, I really felt strongly that today was the day to talk to you. And with you always being obedient to the Lord, here we are this afternoon and sharing this experience.
Yes, I'm anxious to hear your story. And so,
Well,
you've had several different situations.
yes, as far as I mentioned to you when we were talking before we went on air, a near death experience to me is when the enemy tries to take us out before our time that God has allotted us, and He has done that to me several times. As I mentioned to you, I was in three totaled vehicles at three different times. The first time I was 15 years old, and I was drunk. I had stole a car. Uh, I'd been drinking for several days. And if people know about Mount Eagle Mountain that go travel through Tennessee, it's the highest point, one of the highest points on the East Coast. But late at night, one night, I was coming back to Tennessee. As I mentioned, I was only 15, didn't have license. I was very intoxicated, and I ran off the top of that mountain. And I know I've seen a lot of accidents in my life. Uh, and sometimes when you hit a tree, you don't make it when you're going any speed at all. And I hit a lot of trees going off the top of that mountain. Uh, but when I got to the bottom, and I do believe the enemy was trying to take me out, and that's what I feel a lot of near death experiences. When God has His hand in it, I was not even harmed whatsoever. When I got to the bottom, I looked around and I was not hurt. I mean, I was shocked that I could have been dead. Many people have died in less accidents than that one that I was in, but not a scratch. But the reason I wanted to share some of that with you, especially that part, was that God and the angels, and I tell people and I minister in prisons, and I talk to men just face to face and heart to heart. I tell them He has angels that protect us when Satan tries to take us out. I consider that a near death experience because he tried to kill me. I mean, obviously, he had me in a position to take me out. But God has a timetable that He will not allow that. That's why I believe you're still here. I loved your testimony. I listened to the special that you did about your testimony, and He was trying to simply take you out. And all of us that have been close to death like that. Um, but I wasn't even touched. But I still consider it a near death experience because that was His goal. And then the second time was just a couple of years later. And I told my son, Caleb, my other son, Caleb, he's full time ministry. I told you about him. But I was sharing with him this weekend. He asked me about a wreck that I had, and it was in a Chevy Nova. He likes old cars. He likes Chevy Novas. He just bought one. But he said, "Weren't you in a wreck in a Chevy Nova?" And I said, "Yes." I was about 17. This was like 2 years later. And I was drunk again. I stayed drunk for about 10 years, high and drunk from 15 to about 24, 25. And so I told him about it. The police got behind me. I was running from the police again. Was going probably around 100 miles an hour, 90 or 100. It was as fast as that car would go. It was a six cylinder. It was an old Nova. But then it flipped. I had two girls with me, middle of the night, and it started flipping. I didn't make a curve. This was an accident that could have killed all three of us. Again, the second time, not a scratch on us. I got out of the car and actually was going to run, didn't even check on the two girls, and they weren't hurt. That wasn't, none of us had seat belts. Surviving that was another time he tried to take me out. And the third time, I was probably 22. This was just, again, a couple of years after that, same thing, drinking, doing drugs, very high. And I had a friend with me. His name was Art. We were just out drinking, had my girlfriend's car, and we ran out of gas. So we went to a gas station to get some gas. We didn't have any container. So we put the gas in a container that you put water in and put in a radiator. The whole top is out and it has a funnel. So we filled that with gas and was going to go to the car that ran out of gas. But I was driving too fast again, very intoxicated, and flipped that car. That's the third one. This time, also because of that container, the car was soaked in gas. The state trooper said if there was one spark, y'all would just be completely burnt to death because it was soaked in gas. Obviously, the gas just soaked the whole car. It soaked us. It was all over us. And so there's not a doubt in my mind he tried to take us out that day. So I really do think those, what a near-death experience sometimes, but the Lord never let me get hurt one single time, not even hurt in those. But that was the angels, how they protect you is supernatural, because one piece of metal, obviously through your head and you're dead, or one spark or 1 inch here or there. And, but he wouldn't let that happen. He didn't let nothing happen to me. And that was with a purpose so that I could share the gospel with other people, help other people. Jeff and Caleb would never have been born. All this happened before Jeff and Caleb, my two sons who worked tirelessly in the ministry. They wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be here. So I do think he attempts to take us out. Sometimes he will get you, like a lot of the experiences your guests have had, he will take you right to the brink of death. And I think he had me at the brink of death. He was trying to destroy me. So I do see them as similar.
Now, you didn't have any kind of out of body experience or spiritual experience. You just didn't die, right? You didn't get
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah. I consider that as very spiritual, and that the angels had to be moving
On the
me into
ball.
yeah, and to safe. But it was a spiritual experience, and that he protected me supernaturally. I have no doubt in my mind about that.
How did you get into the prison ministry?
Well, because that's where when I was, and I'll just give you a brief background, but uh, I wasn't raised in church. That's why the alcohol, and I never was saved until I was in prison myself. Because all of this leads to a prison sentence when you live a life like I did, drinking, and that's all I did. I didn't work, and all of this came from a divorce. When my mom and dad divorced, it was very traumatic to me, and I was about 15 when they separated. And she took 5 of us children to Tennessee to raise us, and we were raised in Manchester, Tennessee. That's where I raised Jeff and Caleb. But the reason I got in prison ministry is because that's where I got saved. And men brought the gospel every week, week after week, years into the prison where I was at, or while I was locked up. So that's why I got in it. He led me into it. And I've been doing that since about 77, 78, a long time.
How do you get permission to go in the prisons and do that? I'm curious.
You just work with, most of them have jail ministries in place, and someone like myself who has a testimony, because when I share with the men, the first thing I say is, I know how you feel. I've been here. You got their attention right then. They listen to you. They respect you. Not that they don't respect people who were raised in the church and went to seminaries, studied the word. They respect them, but when you know how they feel, they pay attention, and that makes it effective. And they listen to me, and I do know how they feel. I do know how it feels to be in there at Christmas. I do know how it feels to be in there when your children are born. There was a lot of suffering that went with that. But that's why I go into it. And when ministries are established, what I do is just talk to that ministry and say, I'd like to help you. And obviously, we always need help. So we just work together, people that go into prisons, and I go into women's prison and men's prisons.
Do you talk about these accidents or you talk about how your life got changed?
Yes, I talk about sometimes about the accidents, but mainly that, and I'll share briefly about that because the first thing I tell them is I got saved and the Lord spoke to me for the first time when I was in solitaire. That's a cell with nothing in it. They
Right.
put me. They call it the hole or solitaire
I used to be a
because
correctional counselor at a women's maximum.
okay, well they had me there in the hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was there for hurting someone in the population because I was very violent, and if any, and that was very dangerous life as well because I was always into fights, and if anyone said anything to me, we would be fighting. I didn't want to argue. Sometimes they would get surprised about that but if you wanted to argue with me, we would be in a fight.
How long
But
did you serve?
it was about 2 years altogether.
Okay.
2 years, which wasn't a long sentence, but when you're doing it, it seems like it is. But so I wound up in solitaire. So I always share that because what happened when I was in that cell, there was nothing, like I mentioned, it was solid concrete, but not a pillow, not a sheet, nothing. The only thing that was in there was a Bible that someone had left, and it was a Gideon Bible. And so I picked it up. There was nothing to do, obviously, and not even a place to lay your head. So I started reading it. Fortunately, I went to school in the 50s and learned to read and write. And so I started reading that Bible really for the first time. And I opened it up actually to Revelation. But when I started reading it, this was what changed my life from all the drugs, failure, sin. When I started reading it, the Holy Spirit spoke really for the first time to me. Was always protecting me, but he spoke clearly to me. And he said, everything you're reading, good and bad, is true. That was the first thing I ever heard from God, in which I was glad he said that. It's helped me through my whole walk since 1975. But when I was reading it, so everything is true, good and bad. So that helped me in learning the Bible because I'd never had read it. But I accept everything in the Word. And that's been a blessing to me because he told me day one, everything is true. So I'm not a big person on, uh, doctrines of men and churches. He's dealt with me from the beginning. And he also said, when Jesus went away, he said, I'm not going to leave you comfortless. I'm going to send the Holy Spirit, and he will teach and guide you into all truths. So I depend on him and have from the beginning because he gave me that word. And so I've learned, I've studied. I started studying right then in the prison, started reading, when I got out, started going to church, trying to renew my mind because my mind was only always on sin and rebellion and anger. But I had to renew my mind. And the way you do that is reading his word.
So you got saved in solitary when God started speaking to you?
Yes. Hmm. Yeah, I read the word. Now, I did share the other day with I I didn't really when I went up back into the population they kept me a few days and they let me back out. And the first service, I really consider that when I got saved. He started dealing with me in the hole there. But when the first service I got to, when they said, does anyone want to accept the Lord as Savior and change your life, I raised my hand immediately and I prayed with them. I asked God to forgive me, and really, so I think it was a couple of days later. But after he spoke to me, it was over as far as the enemy just pounding me, trying to kill me, and all of that. But it was like 3 days later.
So you were changed.
Yes, definitely was changed, and that's what born again. I always tell people Jesus said, you must be born again. And I like to use the word conversion. It helps people to understand that you have to have a change in your life. And he changed my life then. It was 1975. It was around November or December 75, which is a long time ago. Uh, and so I started studying the word then, and he changed my life. Uh, and then I started, Dr. Howard Farah. I do want to mention his name. He was the one that helped me. John Mann helped me, and Elisha Sandridge. Those three men helped me. And Dr. Howard was a medical doctor in town. He delivered a lot of children in Manchester, but he was a Christian that came to the jail and shared that gospel constantly. Every week he would come to the jail before you go to the prison, and he would share the gospel. He was a great Christian man. And as soon as I got out, he said, well, it's time for you to start sharing your testimony. This was like 76. 77, he started saying, you have to tell what God did for you. So to encourage these other people, and really to answer your questions, that's how I started, because he encouraged me. But also I wanted to do it after I got started. I was obviously nervous the first few times I was sharing, and didn't know how to do it. But I've shared, hundreds of times since then. And but that's what I do now, and that's how I got in the prison ministry. Was just, that's my heart. And but both my sons, Jeffrey had shared, he ministers to a difficult group really to minister to.
Yeah.
But my other son does too. He takes people that are addicted to drugs and meth, and women that are addicted to those things, and he helps them he makes disciples out of them. So all three of us are just wide open into, as I
So
mentioned to you
you
this
have
morning.
one son ministering to drug addicts,
Yes.
and then the other son ministering to people who may want to get out of homosexuality,
Yes. Yes.
transgender, and then you have
Yes.
people, and you're ministering to the prison population.
Yes.
It's like, that's awesome. No wonder Satan wanted to take you out. Oh no. Somebody,
Okay, we're back.
we're back.
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know how to block the phone calls. That was a
That's
phone
okay.
call. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's fine. I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, we're right back. I'm sorry about that. But yes, all three of us are reaching the really people that are really destitute. All three of those categories are people that are hurting. But that's the way we were. Caleb and Jeff both went through a time of living in sin and rebellion in their own lives. So when they got saved, they were really ready to start serving, just like I did.
Now, did you get married after you got out of prison and then you had the boys, or was you married before you went in?
No, well, I was there like well, it started back when I was 15. That time when I told you about the wreck at 15, they sent me to a prison then. And well, it was a prison because in 69, if you remember, I don't know if different states have different laws, but it was from 15 to 21. Now, if you're 18 to 21, you go to a state prison for men. But in my time in the 60s, it went all the way from 15 years old to 21. The law was 21 as an adult. Then they changed it to 18. So I went to prison very young. And
For having an accident,
yeah, they're still
drunk
in
driving?
yeah, those cars were stolen.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I was very rebellious. I mean, I didn't function. I was totally antisocial. I finished last in my class at school. I mean, you couldn't get any more messed up than what I was. So
So
anyway,
you had your first accident at 15 and went to
yes.
prison till 21?
Well, no, the prisons then, when you got
Okay,
sent
you
as
only
a
spent 2 years. Gotcha.
yeah, then as an adult, I spent 2 years, but that I didn't even consider that, when I was sharing that with you. But at 15, they sent me off to a prison as well,
How long
and I
was you
stayed.
there then?
I was there 1 year.
Oh, 1 year.
Yeah, I was there 1 year that time,
Oh,
and
and
then
then you
two
had your
years.
second accident.
Yeah, then 2 years as an adult. Well, that's kind of confusing because men that are 19 and 20, they're adults. I consider them adults. But back in the 60s, they would put you in they would call it juveniles because you weren't considered an adult to 21. So it was
Right.
different then. But it was a prison, and I was there. So I went through a lot of that.
Okay. So you stole a car and wrecked it, went to prison for a year, and then you got out and then stole another car?
And then I was still young. I was only 16 or about 17. But then I continued to drink the whole time. Then, of course, when I turned 18, they locked me straight up because I never stopped drinking. And that's when I did the 2 years, was like 18, 19 years old.
Then when
And
was the
then
third wreck?
uh, yeah, the third wreck, they didn't really even do anything to me
Oh, how
because
old was you then?
I was probably 21 or 22. It was toward the end of right before I got saved.
Okay.
So it was toward the end.
But you
And
got saved in prison.
yes, yeah, I got saved in there. When I came out, I did get married. And I've been through a lot and I didn't, when you first get saved, I didn't overcome everything immediately.
Right.
I was saved.
Right.
I have no doubt about it. But the renewing of my mind took several years. And that's why we have to be patient with young Christians. It took a few years. Now it's been 40 years since I've drank at one drop of, I haven't drank anything since he delivered me from that. Like I don't drink socially. I've never got high again. When he delivered me from that, it was around 40 years ago. That was, a long time, right at it. And so that's been behind me a long time. But the first year or two, I was stumbling. I didn't know the
Right.
word. I did. He did help me. Like I said, when he told me how to study, it did help. And I started studying and growing and learning. And now, obviously, you don't live like that. You don't fall as often as you did when you were 6 months old in the Lord. I didn't know really anything. I just described how bad I lived.
We don't
I
have
didn't
peer
know it.
pressure anymore.
No. I live for God now, and that's the most important thing to me. And even this morning when I woke up, I was thinking about scriptures. I was thinking about you. I was thinking, and I really am so glad that you allow people to share the gospel, and you're not ashamed of the gospel, and neither am I. But it takes time to get to that point. It took me a few years when I first got saved. But now it's much easier. My sons we pray together, we work together. I was at his church last Sunday in Tennessee with him. He's doing a great job. He preached at a tent revival in McMinnville, actually where I was born, McMinnville, Tennessee. I was there Saturday night. So what I like to do is be with Christians. But as I told you this morning, I wanted to share my testimony because I also share this with people in prison. He will restore you. I am restored now, and I'm in my right mind. I was not even in my right mind when I was in prison. If you said one thing to me, we'd be fighting. I mean, that's not normal. That's not healthy. It's dangerous. But that's how I live. But of course, now I'm patient. If somebody says something foolish, I may answer them, but I'm not going to hit them in the mouth like I used to.
There's silence here. I don't know what to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just like,
Well, I was just saying how much he has changed my life. And I feel like I'm blessed now. I get to help other people. And sorry about the silence. I thought you may have a
No,
question, but
I just like drew a blank.
oh no, that's
Like it's 8 o'clock. That's late for me. Like I'm not a
okay.
night person. I get up early. So I'm sorry if I'm not like,
Oh no, I really appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciate your ministry, and I support you 100%. I watch your videos, and I just wanted to share how that God is going to help us. He's helping us even in this time of darkness. I heard a pastor share a few days ago. He's going to do two things simultaneously. even the darkness and everything, the sin, the rebellion, the perversion, and everything's going on, he's going to still be simultaneously saving people, helping people, maturing us that are Christians already. He really wants to do that in 2022, and he can do both of them at the same time. When I heard this, him preaching that, I'm like, yes, that's good right there.
What do you think, or what do the ministers you're around think about what's going on right now?
Well, of course, it's a lot of darkness. Uh, the enemy is trying to, as I mentioned, I know that he tries to take us out. He's also trying to take out people, and he is doing so. And I think people are leaving early because of the traps and a lot of things he has. And I don't know what you think about the vaccines, but I believe the enemy's using a lot of
Well, if we
DNA.
talk about it, they'll take me off YouTube.
Yeah,
I found
yeah,
that out.
yeah. So, but he's doing a lot of things. That's just one thing. He's doing a lot of things to take people out. Like I mentioned, he's tried to take me out. He's tried to take you out. He's going to continue to do that in this time. And pastors know that. But what we can do is serve God, live for him. Nothing can stop us and nothing can separate us. And he tried to take me out, but I feel like until my time that the Lord has allotted me is here, I will be here. And I've had COVID, and you've just dealt with it.
Yeah.
So
I probably wouldn't have known what you were talking about, but like a year ago, I was driving to town just right out of 10 minutes from home, and all of a sudden I felt like I'm going to be in an accident, something bad's going to happen, I don't know. And I'm like, this is crazy. There's not another car on the highway. It's almost, it's like it's early in the day. I think after I got done, it was almost 11. It was 11:11 when the whole thing was over, because I remember looking at my radio clock and it said 11:11. But so I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I'm by myself here in my car. I'm just going to start praying. God, I don't know why I'm so scared right now, but just keep me safe. And it wasn't probably 30 seconds, and then I seen another car approaching. It's just 2-lane road, and State Route 7. And all of a sudden, that black SUV pulled into my lane and started barreling right straight to me. There's no reason. There's nothing to pass. There's no
yeah,
reason. And I
yeah,
felt like that, like, oh my God, death wants me and it wants me right now. And I
yeah,
never had felt that. I couldn't believe those words was coming into my mind. But that's the words death. It wasn't like this person in this car. It was like death wants me right now. And I thought that
yeah,
was it. And so I just held on the steering wheel. And I'm the type person, I've always told myself, so it's ingrained in me, you never swerve, because I've heard of people getting hurt worse by
yeah,
swerving. And so,
yes,
but then something just like I washed my hand like I wasn't doing it, just barely, gently go to the left, and it kind of like I heard something say like, we can just go a little bit. And that black SUV was still in my lane, but it just went on my side, my driver's side, and I braced myself for the crunch, the screech, this loud noise. Nothing. And I looked in my rearview mirror, and it went back in its own lane and went on down the road. And I had to pull over. I was shaking so much. But I would have never known what you're
yeah,
talking about when you feel like something wants me gone.
yes,
Something wants to take me out.
yes. And that's what I'm saying about the angels. He might have, that was supernatural. I mean, it could have been he was going to hit you. I mean, he protects us in that way. And that was a near death experience, probably as close, and the enemy was involved, but the Lord was also involved. And that's why I shared those three things, because I really believe he wanted you out, but he's not going to be able to do it until that time. And a lot of us, and that's the other thing as a teacher, and I have now the Lord restored me. As I mentioned to you a minute ago, Peggy, I finished last in my high school class, literally,
I probably did
straight
too.
up. Yeah, well, I did. But he's restored me. I have it now, a degree in education education and history. He started restoring me after I was born again, back to what I was supposed to be. And so I have a college degree, which would amaze most of
I
my
do
friends.
too. They would all
Yeah,
be shocked. I'm sure I've been voted least likely. You've probably been too to
yeah,
go to college, let alone graduate.
yes, I was as well. So we're in the same boat. And I also went on and was challenged to get a master's degree in education and history, and I did. So I have a graduate degree, I have a master's, and then he restored that. And I was supposed to have that the whole time. That's the other thing. And I share this with prisoners. Doesn't matter how far down you are, he can restore everything that the enemy has stolen. That's the word. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the word of God. And it is true. So I encourage them. He can totally restore you. I've been down to in a room with nothing, not even a bed. And but he has restored me. I'm also now what I do now. I'm a scout. I work with Major League Baseball. That was something. Athletics and sports were all taken away from me at 16, and so. But he's restored me. I'm getting ready for the draft right now. I represent players. I'm a sports agent, but I work in Major League Baseball. No one would have ever dreamed I would have been in the big leagues, but I'm in the big leagues. I get to work with them. I don't work with a specific team. I represent the players, and the draft starts Sunday. And I have a player that will be in the draft. I'm very proud of him. He's a great kid. So I get to be involved in helping people, even that are professional athletes. So the Lord, I shared all that negative, but the positive is He is totally restoring me to my right mind. Or I still believe I'm being restored, but I've gone a long ways from where I was.
How old was you when you graduated with your bachelor's?
Uh, that was I am six. I'll be 69 in October. Uh, I believe it was 9 years ago. I did that as an adult. Now, when I first got saved, I went to college for 2 years at Montlow State in Tennessee as a junior college. I went my first 2 years, but I didn't graduate until just about, I guess it was 9 years ago, somewhere around there.
So you
With
were
the back,
about 60 when you graduated with your bachelor's?
yes,
That's
yes, I was
awesome.
almost 60 years old, and but I wanted to finish. The Lord told me you need to finish, and while I was there, and I did finish my last 2 years, and I went to Piedmont. It's a small school up on the mountain in the mountains here in Georgia, but it's called Piedmont. But when I was sitting in my history class one day, the professor said, "A bachelor's degree that's a good thing, but that's not a graduate degree. That's a undergraduate degree." So that little challenge, which he only spit it out there, he didn't probably even know who it's for. But when he said that, I said, "I'm going to finish." I even wanted to finish the master's in the education and history, and I did. I kind of took that as a challenge. So the Lord let me finish everything that I started.
That's awesome. How long have
Yeah,
you had your
thank you.
master's now?
Well, I went straight into it.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah,
That's cool.
when he challenged me, I just said, "Well, okay, I'll do it." And I had to study 2 more years to get a master's, but I did that, and I love history. Jeff also has a master's in history. My son Jeff
Huh.
Mccall, and he works in the Freedom March. He founded and started Freedom March, one of the biggest ministries in the world to the LBGT community.
Yeah.
And he loved history, same as me. So he and I both have masters in history.
With both Jeff Mccall on it.
Yes, yes. Our diplomas say Jeff Mccall, both of them. But he's accomplished a lot, and I'm very proud of my children, and I thank you for having him on. I know it's that you was talking about controversy a minute ago. I mean, Jeff's ministry is controversial
Yeah.
uh, because he believes people can be delivered from anything, as same as I do. Anything, no matter what bondage it is, you can be free and you can be in your right mind, and have a sound identity and be at peace with yourself. And we believe that. I tell every prisoner, I don't care if he has 20-year sentence, you can live in peace here, you can study here, you can't keep the Holy Spirit out of prison. He'll be here to comfort you, teach you. So that's what we do. And I just wanted to really share that today. And I know it's late for you, and I really
Oh,
appreciate
that's
that.
okay. I was just thinking it was a shame that Netflix, that show Pray Away that your son Jeff was on, it's a shame that they did him the way they did on there. I mean, made him look like the bad person. And he wasn't
Right.
responsible for any of that stuff that went on in the
And the other,
70s, this Pray
yeah,
Away. It had nothing to do with him.
right. Well, the one thing, Peggy, I don't know if you got to talk to Jeff lately, but that really backfired on Netflix because
Really?
he gets he gets calls from all over the world. They sent it to 90 something countries, and he gets calls from everywhere. They could not hide his countenance because he loves people. And so people that are in that lifestyle, they're calling him, asking him, how do you get out of it?
It's
They tried to
awesome.
make him look bad, but it did not work as far as no, they couldn't hide the love that he has for people.
Yeah.
And so it's actually people are getting saved watching that movie. I know they didn't intend for that, but it is happening.
Yeah.
I'm because
And his
I talked.
part is the only good part in that.
Yeah, okay.
The rest of it's crap.
Yes, well, you're right. Because they're trying to promote it as healthy, and obviously it is not healthy. And I tell people, and this is very, very serious, but the reason the suicide rate is the highest in their other, it's, and I tell people it's because of the weight of the sin. It's not because somebody laughed at you. You're supposedly proud of it. The reason is the weight of sexual sin is so heavy you can't bear it. I have felt that on my life when I was involved in sexual sin. The weight is heavy, and that's what contributes to this. And they want to blame it on something else. That's the truth of the matter.
Now, was there something in your childhood you think that caused you to be drinking and stealing cars at 15?
Yeah, it was the divorce. Divorce is
Oh,
such
yeah.
a, yeah, that was the catalyst or the event that really hurt me. I loved my family. I wanted to be with my family. The reason, and several times I wanted to go be with my dad, and he lived in South Carolina. My mom was doing her best to raise us five children in Tennessee, but I would want to be with my dad sometimes. And if I had to steal a car to go do it, I was so immature at 15, I had no clue what I was doing. But I would steal a car, and the repercussions from that, I didn't really care. And if they put me in prison, I just went to prison. I was so immature, and my mind and brain was so under. It's not developed at 15 and 16. You're a kid,
Yeah.
but that divorce really was the heart of everything,
It
and
was
it
hard on
hurt.
me too. My parents divorced at 10.
It hurts. Yeah, you know.
I was the youngest of five. And they said later it affected me the most because I was the youngest.
Yeah, yeah. It's a heartache that sometimes we just respond wrongly to it, and I did do that, and it was very hurtful. And but he even restored me to my dad before he passed away. Jeff and Caleb's grandfather, my dad. I prayed with him. That was the last words he said on earth because he knew I was standing beside him. And the last thing he said, "Would you pray for me?" He just really whispered it. He couldn't even. I barely could hear it, but I did hear him. And that was the last thing he ever said. And I did pray with him, and I prayed that and he was agreeing with me that he would be forgiven, and because he didn't really help us, and he lived his whole life in sin and without God. But it only takes that moment, as Jeff tells a lot of people, my son. It only takes a moment for him to change your life, and we prayed and asked God to forgive him and help him, and so I got to. That was the last thing, and he passed away right after that.
Did you just get to have a relationship with your dad right before he passed, or was you able
No,
to be in
we
his life?
yeah, I would always go see him and respected him. Even when he wasn't living for God, I would spend time with him, and I respected him. I always showed respect to him after I was saved. And so we did get to spend a few years together. But he never would surrender until that when he needed God, he asked me to help him, and I did in prayer because I had also prayed with him a few weeks before that. But when he got sick, he never really recovered. But I did pray with him 2 times, and that was the last time was right before he passed away. He asked me to pray for him again, and that's all it takes is you asking a man of God or a woman of God to pray for you, and God will hear that prayer. I have no doubt.
Right.
So, but it was broken, but I always respected him because he was my dad, and Jeff lives here in Royston, and I really appreciate Jeff. We're in the middle of nowhere, kind of here in Royston. It's a town out in the North Georgia. It's a country town, but he lives here. Really, I know he respects me. He loves me. He wants to be with me,
Now,
and
does he
so
live
I'm
with
really
you or beside you?
no. He has an apartment beside us uptown. It's just a short 2 minutes from here. But Jeff could live anywhere in the world with his ministry because he travels all the time. But I really appreciate that. He really wants probably just to be with me, if he, being
That's
honest.
sweet. That's nice.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My other son, Caleb, lives in Manchester, Tennessee.
Okay. Well, I'm glad everything has worked out for you. I mean, it just makes you think, gosh, you could have been killed in that first wreck, the second wreck,
Yeah.
the third wreck,
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
or,
he
or in
spared.
prison. I mean, something could have happened the way you were fighting. And
Oh, if I had not have got saved, I told my son Caleb this. If I had not have got saved, I wouldn't be alive. He would have taken me out. There's not a doubt in my mind. I might have been in prison somewhere, but I more than likely would have been dead because someone would have killed me. I mean, that's just no doubt about it.
it's strange how when we get older, we can kind of put all the pieces together. It almost seems like there's this equation that made us who we are. Like there was some master plan equation that equaled, what we were going to be all along. And it seems
Yes,
like there's so many
yes,
guardian angels out there trying to make
yes,
sure that we complete our
yes.
mission.
That was my story today, was to share about that because they're literal angels. This is not a mythical. The angels that he has to guard us are as real as you and I are. And I not don't just I know that for a fact. And he's helped you just a short time ago with the accident, but he helped me in those. You don't live through those 3 wrecks, really. I mean,
You
that
know,
wasn't.
and people ask, well, their family member, died in a car wreck or died in whatever, or a disease young, why didn't they get? But I think what we need to realize is the reward's not here. I mean, we have work to do, but the reward's in heaven.
Yes. Oh yes, and we're going to have our resurrected bodies soon. I mean, that's another whole show, but I really I believe the scriptures, as I mentioned, every one of them. I believe in the rapture. I believe in him changing our bodies in a second, and I believe we are so close to that, it's unreal. And I also believe we need to warn people about his coming. He said he's coming back. He said he's coming back for a church without spot or wrinkle. And he also warns us, be ready, don't be caught unaware. And that was the other thing that was on my heart and about sharing this. And I'm glad I got to share it here at the end. But we're going to be changed and we'll be in our right minds when he changes us for that final time. And it's called the first resurrection. That's what it's called. The dead in Christ will rise first, and us that are alive and remain are caught up to, and we'll forever be with him. And that's when we'll be in our body and our right minds. As I'm fighting to have a restored mind like you are. We're studying the word. We're fellowshipping with each other. We're listening to each other. But our minds will be totally restored in 1 second. And then we won't be doing things like we're doing. And I thought about that this morning because and even my son, he has tattoos, Caleb does. But I was thinking I want to say this one thing. When we get our resurrected bodies, you're not going to be in the third heaven. First, we're going to be with the Lord at the marriage supper of the Lamb. But we're not going to be looking for ink or something to tattoo us when we have our resurrected bodies. We're not going to be writing on them, putting things through our nose and our mouth and different our eyebrows. We're going to be a perfect body. We're going to be happy with it. We will be have a sound mind. You won't be wanting to write on yourself. Everywhere I go, it looks like the people look like a billboard with writing on their face, and we're not going to do that anymore. When you get that resurrected body, you won't be looking for a tattoo shop anymore, and you won't be trying to change your body and change your mind and change your thing. And Jeff has to deal with that with people even wanting to change who they are. Jeff went through that. But when you're delivered, you can be delivered now. But when we get that resurrected body, those desires are not even going to be there anymore. The Lord showed me that this morning, or it was about 2 or 3 days ago. We're not going to be wanting to change our bodies anymore. We're going to be happy.
What
And we'll
did
be,
you think when Jeff told you that he was changing from what he was? I mean, he was going in the trans and was considering having the
yeah.
change and then saved.
Well, when he told me that, he only told me that at the very end. He hid it for most of the time, which he shared with you. He would always hide it, but at the last, he got so desperate. He was suicidal, and he told me about it. And the only thing I did as a dad who loved my son, he called me in the middle of the night, and I went to East Tennessee, and I said, "Don't do anything. I'll be there in a minute." It was in the middle of about 3 in the morning. And so all a dad should do if you're saved is go pray with him right then. Love him. Do not compromise that you're in any shape, form, or fashion. Never compromise. And I told him, you're going to live for God. You're not going to do this. You're going to live for God. And me and his brother Caleb laid hands on him, and one day in Manchester prayed for him, and that was broken off of him. Sometimes you have to be delivered, and which he was, and that's a great help. Sometimes, after you're saved, he starts renewing your mind and restoring your spirit. On Jeff's, we had to break that off of him, me and Caleb, and we did. And but it was heartbreaking. But you just don't compromise. And Jeff will tell you, I loved him every second of his life. I didn't never turn my back. And if he said, I want to be a woman, all I would say is, no, I would always say, you're going to live for God, and you're a man, and God made you that way, and you're going to be whole. And he is. But that was part of it. Having a dad in the gap, obviously, made a difference.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on and contacting me and wanting to come on and for listening to the show. And
I'm hoping this will get to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know it's different, man. I'll probably talk to you.
Sometimes that's what the person needs. There can be 150, podcasts they watch and nothing touch them. And all it takes is sometimes something different.
Well, yeah, people that are hurting, I hope this can help them. And the word of God is true, and it's true for them. Every person that listens, even if they're down or still in sin, all he wants you to do is ask for him to touch you and change you, and he will. Same as he did for me. And that's why I shared about being restored. It's nice to be restored and have peace at night. It's wonderful. It's way better than being high.
And we've all had miracles. They don't have to be near-death experiences or, out-of-body experience. We've all had miracles where if we look back and have gratitude and realize that how things could have turned out differently.
Yes. I'm very blessed, and you are too. And to have your home there in this ministry, you're blessed. And I tell my wife, I said, the one thing we need to do is keep pressing into the things of God. And that's our goal. Even though, I'm a professional now, he's blessed me, but our number one goal is to press in and learn more about God and be right with God.
Yeah. And I love that, what you and your sons are doing because, for so many years, people just went to church. That's the only way you heard the word. You went to church. And,
yes.
we're doing things where you don't have to go to church. Not that we're trying to prevent people from going to church,
Yeah.
or not that we don't want people. It's not that. It's just not everybody goes. That's not everybody's thing for whatever reasons, and we can still have gratitude and understand how God works in our lives.
Yes, and we share that wherever they're at.
Yes.
Jeff shares with people in that just in the grocery stores when he sees, or hears of a need. I go to where they're at in prison and share the gospel. It's not a church, but they get saved there, same as I did. I got saved there.
That's
It doesn't
awesome.
matter where you're at, but afterwards you do need to go to have a pastor and covering and fellowship with other Christians. That's what the church is for, really, is after you get saved so you can grow and learn. But you can get saved anywhere.
Yeah. You kind of got to change your people, place, and things,
Yes.
to get away from the temptations if you want to change.
Yes. Yeah, you change friends when you get saved. I
Yeah.
mean, he talks about that in Proverbs. How to conduct yourself and how to be careful, and you have to watch what your eyes see. I mean, you have to guard the gates that the Lord give us with our eyes and our mouth, our ears, and that's how you have to mature, or He will make you stumble again, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
So you have to grow in grace and knowledge of Him,
Yeah.
studying the Word and fellowshipping with one another. And that's why I wanted to be on your show today.
Thank you.
I really did. And thank you so much for allowing it.
Thank you. All right then. Bye bye.
Bye bye.